I caught myself scrolling through my old yearbooks after cleaning my room after some time. Some names popped in my head that I hadn't said out loud in years as I was looking through the pages, and I was just sitting there wondering what happened to us. There's something pretty quietly bittersweet in those moments of remembering fond memories and not so fond memories. It's the feeling I get when summer fades into autumn, even when you're out of school. For me, I've graduated, but summer still holds a special place in my heart when it ends because it's so bittersweet, because then school starts again. And while you enjoy the freedom of not having to go to school, being able to see your friends again was always something so magical. And so I guess this is something more about friendships than it is about school, about how they start, how they change, and why some of them slip away while others stay. So I've lost a lot of friends throughout the years, both through falling out, both from things that are my fault or the friend's fault, and you'll never know, but also due to faults such as life circumstances, such as death. I don't know, there's something simple about friendships that happen in your youth. When you're a kid, friendships just happen. They're as easy as breathing. You sit someone next to you in class and you happen to be friends. You become friends. And if it doesn't work out, then you wish and you hope that your teacher will let you switch seats, or that the next month or the next quarter or semester or what have you, your teacher switches seats and now you've met someone new, right? You trade snacks, or you just realize you both love the same artists or music or games, and then suddenly you have a new best friend. There's really just no overthinking. There's no worrying if people will text you back or if you're being too much. It just felt like things were so effortless, like a peer connection. It was meant to be back then with friendships. There wasn't this dilly-dallying or, in a weird way, pussyfooting through what is socially normal or accepted. Remember spending entire summers with my childhood best friend. It was me getting picked up and then dropped off at my friend's house. We'd ride our bikes till the streetlights came on. We would make up games, play Xbox together, and we would talk about everything, and at the same time, nothing at all. Time would pass slowly, as you would all know, and it would pass too quickly. It would just always feel like we'd always be in each other's lives. It's funny how in that moment when you're a kid, you don't think about endings when you're young. And that kind of magic goes away as you grow older, where everything and everyone that you meet turns into a calculated plan or some type of thing where you need to understand if this is going to be efficient. Personally, for me, that's how I navigate a lot of my friendships now and relationships. Is this going to pan out properly? Am I doing the right things to make sure that this friendship is fostered and cultivated properly? I don't know if that's something that I only do, but I suspect as you grow older and as you lose people due to falling outs or disagreements or quarrels, or just because life takes you that way, you start thinking about, is it worth my time and energy to really invest into this friendship? Do I want to invest in this friendship? Because can I emotionally handle the loss? So I don't know. I think one of my best friends to this day, whom I hold to a very unfair advantage in terms of standard, is because he passed away when I was first getting into college. It was obviously a huge shock, but that memory of this childhood friendship that I have of him is so vivid because he left too abruptly. And I now gauge everyone else to that standard, this perfect snapshot of when he left me. And again, this might not apply to you in this specific way, but perhaps you could do the same thing where if only that person hadn't left, or if only you guys hadn't had that disagreement, that person would still be your perfect friend. But it doesn't happen that way, and comparing them to anyone in the future is unfair to your future friends. I don't know. And then you grow up And friendship isn't something that just happens anymore, right? Life gets so messy. I've graduated university and it's so much harder to make friends now, especially with the baggage, the trauma, and the burdens that I personally carry and everyone else probably carries as well. People move away. There's work, there's relationships, people start having their own families. There's so many things pulling on someone, pulling on me at my time and at my energy. It's not just school. It's not just like school back then, where everyone had an orbit that overlapped. We have to work for our friendships and work to meet and work to cultivate and foster friendships now. Back then, it was so easy because you always had the same schedule. The worst thing that could have happened was that you weren't placed in the same class with your friends. I've had friends I swore I'd never lose touch with, and yet here I am struggling to remember the last time we really talked. It's not that anyone necessarily did anything wrong in these times, it just happens to be life. For example, one of my dearest, closest friends, I remember brimming golden moment in our experience was him getting married and then him having a kid. But little did I know that those things would take him away from me. Not because we disagreed on anything, but because life just took him away because it was so busy for him. He started to take care of his family. He had to think about things that I could never fathom because I am not married, nor am I a father. And it just doesn't make it any easier when you realize how much distance has grown between us. And now you're kind of juggling, should I reach out? Is my time worth their time? Is their time worth mine? And we're always on this dance, on this tightrope of balancing who puts what energy where. And I think that's something that I personally struggle with too. It's a matter of, I'm the one that's always reaching out, I'm getting tired of it, or even vice versa. You're the one always being reached out to if you're one of those fortunate ones to have friends that are amazing like that. And sometimes you just keep saying no until they stop inviting you at all. And so a lot of these friendships that I talk about have faded naturally over time for one reason or another. And a lot of friendships that I've also had have imploded for one reason or another. I recall having have found a, not necessarily a replacement, but someone who could take on the mantle adjacent to the friend that I had lost. And it was such a beautiful friendship because we were working together. We were coworkers and we had met through work. And we were having the same schedule day in and day out. And I think that was something that I've missed, being able to have not necessarily a friend and not necessarily like a lover or significant other or a partner, but rather a companion. And that's something that I've been searching for such a long time, really, is someone who is your ride or die, someone who would say yes to you no matter what, in the middle of the night or in an early morning or of a late night. Hey, let's go get donuts. Sure, let's do it. And I think that becomes so difficult as you grow older because of the many things that I mentioned before. You're being pulled in so many different ways. The thing about friendships as an adult is that they take work. It's not necessarily a bad thing. It just means that friendships have to be more deliberate, I realized. I choose who you keep close. You choose who you keep close and who you're willing to make an effort for. And I think that that's a big struggle too. It's when you personally have your own personality and the way that you've navigated life for XYZ amount of years, you fall into a pattern or a sense of heuristic or level so that you understand that deliberation. You start to choose or don't choose who you want to keep close because you're jaded or you're pessimistic. Like I am. I've lost a lot of friends to the point where I'm like, I don't really need friends. No friends are better than toxic friends. And I think that's a lesson that a lot of people need to learn, that keeping people just for friendship's sake or for keeping them sake due to time or memories that you once had together is something that's so overrated. I've learned sometimes, though, it is about sending that random text to check in on people or scheduling something that's really brief, like a coffee date or a quick bite or something like that. Even when we're exhausted, you have to stay open and say yes to these things. It's about showing up even when it's inconvenient. But again, it's a matter of meeting each other halfway. You can't always be the one that decides to send that random text. Sometimes you need to receive that random text. But again, this one isn't really about how to navigate, but rather navigating friendships in general. I think those little acts of effort, I think they are what keep friendships alive. I think it takes two to tangle. I think that people and those who are busy can always make time. If you really mattered to them, you would make time. Because I think there was this one point where I was trying to have a podcast with a old friend that I reconnected with, and it was working. We reconnected as if no time had passed between us, as if no distance had occurred between us, and it was working, and then it just didn't. And I blame myself because I think that I no longer, because we were driving to his place, and it was a drive for me, and I just couldn't get past it, and I couldn't get over the fact that I personally had problems that I was dealing with, and I couldn't get myself to go. And I think that's what I mean. It's these acts of effort. I was able to do it for the most part, but then when I started realizing that, not necessarily with the person with the podcast, but when I wasn't being reciprocated, when my energy wasn't being reciprocated, my gifts or my love language and things like that, then I just kind of stopped caring. The outcome wasn't perfect, and I learned another thing about myself. It's when you choose and you deliberate to keep someone in your life, you consistently have to do it, especially for the one that's coming back. The people who come back have to expend more energy because the other ones who had been deserted or been left were always there anyway. But again, it's tricky and it's difficult because being the one who leaves, sometimes you leave for a healthy reason. Sometimes friendships are toxic, sometimes friendships are bad, and sometimes friendships actually aren't friendships at all, but because you've known them for so long and you've shared on these memories that you're afraid that if you're the one who's the only one holding on these memories, what happens to those memories once you're gone? Right? I've always played with this thought that if you could replace somebody and you did the same exact things with that person that you did with your past person, then technically wouldn't it be the same thing? But when you reduce friendships like that, and obviously it's unrealistic to completely clone someone's experiences into another person, you then realize that you have to just go with the flow. I don't know. All friendships aren't meant to last forever. I think that's the part I think we all kind of struggle with the most. Sometimes, no matter how much you care, life just pulls you in different directions, and it's hard to let go. It's hard to accept that some connections are only meant to be temporary. But maybe that's okay. Maybe it's enough that we had each other in a part of our lives when we needed them, when you needed them, when you were part of theirs and they were a part of yours. Even if someone's not in your life anymore, they shaped who you are, and I think that's something worth holding on to. I've learned so much, both from my healthy relationships as well as my unhealthy relationships. I've learned what I don't like with the unhealthy relationships and what I do like with the healthy relationships. And I don't speak of healthy relationships as those that have stuck around, but I meaningfully and mean it when I say it, that some healthy relationships ended. And even if they didn't end on a good note, they could still generally be healthy, especially if I derived a very good and beneficial lesson from it. I've started to think of friendships like chapters in a book. Some are long and sprawling, like chapter 2 of The Two Towers in Lord of the Rings, where it describes just a forest, whereas others are just a page or two, like a prologue or an epilogue. But every one of them adds to your story. And even when a chapter ends, the story keeps going. And I think that's the beauty. I think that as you go through life and you think that things are a waste or things aren't worth your time, you realize then you derive and you detract and really deprive yourself of any type of meaning, any type of joy because when you don't try at all, nothing is really going to happen. I think a lot of times any effort is better than no effort. So here's what I ask of you. Who's a friend that left an imprint on your life, and how do you honor those connections even if they faded? Every friendship, whether it lasts a lifetime or just a moment, I believe is a story worth telling.